Hey, how's it going, fellow INFJ folk? So I want to talk to you a little bit something about my cultural view and my perspective of death as an INFJ. Right. And the reason why I want to speak about death is because death has been happening a lot lately. More so of friends and family on my daughter's and wife's side of the family. And I talked about it before of how I seem like emotionless during death. But to get some context behind it, I think I needed to explain a little bit more about the native perspective that I have and how I look at death, but then also being an INFJ and how they kind of, you know, come together in my mind and how I process everything. So originally I told my daughters and my wife, of course, all my kids, um, how I process death, and reason why I'm so numb to death is because I seen death at a young age, like dead bodies and smelt death, and it just having those situations kind of made me numb to death, and so I've always really tried to avoid going to funerals and seeing other death, and not to say I can't empathize or I have not ever been able to empathize. Coming from my background and what I used to do for work, I used to empathize a lot and advocating for people and a lot of this, and I had a lot of Facebook friends, so I was always like reaching out to people who had lost and consoling them and talking to them, and it was a, what do you call, a roller coaster of emotions for me constantly. And I had to like really reflect on everything that I was doing, because my ability to empathize and what I needed to do for the people closest to me got really, really thin. And that wasn't a good thing, because I wasn't able to be the best and what what those closest to me really needed from me. So to be able to be that support for them when they needed me, when death occurred, needed to needed to shift. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so I was that typical INFJ who was able to empathize and did empathize and really try to understand and help people gain a perspective that I had about death and communication with death. Um, so because I have made this transition, I do have exceptions, and with the recent death on my wife and daughter's side of the family, it was, well, a relative of theirs' daughter, and that relative is around the same age as me, and so I went to go drop them off at the cities, and I was, after I dropped them off and I was about to leave, and I sat there for a few moments just thinking. And this is where the exception came, because I don't usually do stuff like this anymore. But being a father, losing a child, has to be one of the most horrendous feelings to go through. And I know I never want to feel that. And I'm fearful of that, which is why I'm so protective and try to watch everything, you know. So in that moment of thinking, before I put it in reverse and backed off, I got out of the vehicle and I walked inside, and I saw him there, and I just went for him. He knew what I was coming for. Embraced him in a hug and told him sorry for his loss. And that was it. It's like I had to pay my respects. And another exception that I did have at another time was like 2 or 3 years ago. Um, was with a close friend of mine. I used to sing with him on a drum, and his mother passed away. And I don't, like I said, I don't go to funerals. I don't like singing at funerals. I don't like feeling the emotions of funerals of everybody and the loss. That's something I don't like placing myself into. And when my friend lost his mom, I didn't tell him. They didn't expect me because he lives like 5 hours away from me up north. But just being able to like really relate, if I lost my mother, I do not want to lose my mother. She's one of the closest people in my life. So I just felt the obligation. I told my wife, it's like, I gotta go. And without a question or anything, she said, I know. And I grabbed my stuff and took off and hit the road. Got up there, and I didn't try to even make myself notice. I went in the back and sat in the back, and I know he saw me. Then he called me up, and I don't know, I just embraced him. His whole family, because I know the whole family, and I knew his mom to an extent. But yeah, they're an extended part of my family. So I had to make that. And do you understand? Like, so there's exceptions that I do make to be there because I can relate to it, the pain and the loss, and I have to pay my respects. So those are the exceptions that I do make. And so also the what do you call the native perspective and lens that I have about death and how that relates to me as being an INFJ, and actually like the state that I am in right now is death. When death occurs, it's like a 4-day process. The first 3 days are wakes. There's a fire that's lit and kept lit the whole time because that's where you say the prayers, and that's where you say the wishes and like talk to the spirit, because it like lights the path in a way. And also you send the food that way for them so they can eat and when they're going on their journey, because it's a 3-day cycle of them making their rounds to everywhere that they've been and the lives that they impacted, and just making a route before they head off on a journey to the spirit world. And so the ceremonial part in those 3 days is just songs, then of course stories, and just that whole thinking about them and taking care of everything that needs to be taken care of, and the prayers and the feeding and the feeding of the spirits and all of this. So then when day 4 comes, that's the morning, the like morning day, where we say the final prayers and the final songs and the traveling songs and the last viewing. And what it was supposed to be for me is like when you close the casket, you have to get all your mourning out before that time. And when the casket is closed, then you go take them and bury them and sing the traveling song and put them under, or however they choose to be sent off. That's it. Then after that is we go into just remembering the good that they brought in your life and live how they would want you to live. Not to continue mourning, because they're still following 3 more years when you have the time to mourn. Because like a lot of times I may not mourn on them 3 days or that 4th day, but there's still 3 more years on those memorial days when I may have a chance to mourn. So I always take exception to them days if I don't have the time and I need to be there for whoever else may be mourning, and I need to reserve my morning time and be the strength, then that's what I'll do, because there will be a time and a place for me to mourn when I need to mourn before the time is over. Oh, excuse me. But then also, like, the reason why we're not supposed to mourn through that year and just supposed to remember the good times, because they're on that journey to the spirit world. And it's like, you know how when you have a resentment on someone, and it's like you have a lasso attached on them, or a connection to that person, and every time they do something, it annoys you and it irritates you and it like tugs at you. And that's the same thing like when a person has passed on, and if you continue to mourn them, it's the same thing. Like, you're still attached onto them, and when they're trying to travel, you're tugging at them, and it makes their travel harder. And sometimes they are not able to go on to the spirit world, and they get stuck because that connection. And it's a part of honoring their life and their journey, and it's being respectful to the process of all of this. So, like, you reserve it for that time and place. So the second or the third or the fourth year will be your time to mourn and get it out, because that's when your time comes. And also that is brings about something that my daughters are going through. Like, one of the daughters would cry more than the other at times like this, and was like, she's seen it as being sensitive, and the other one who didn't cry as much was like she's being too sensitive. And they have come to a point where they have switched, and my daughter, who never would really cry, has been crying a lot lately because of all of the deaths that have been happening with their friends and family. And the one who used to cry more, she can't cry, or she says, I don't feel like crying. Is that bad? And I just gave a little perspective about your about their emotional containers, and that we all have emotional containers. Some things may have happened to us where our container may have already been overflowing, and we never properly released and got rid of all of those emotions in a proper way. So it was always there, and that's something that she had. But now she reached a numbness. Not really a numbness, but like a clearing where it's clarity. She has a bit of clarity in knowing that she doesn't need to cry and go through this horrible emotions. And I said it has to do with emotional regulation and understanding your emotional state, and also the processing that you have. And it's okay not to cry at times, and it's okay to cry at times, and your time will come when you need to cry, if you need to cry. But it's your emotional capacity to cry if it's not full, and you just may be in a state of shock, you know. And so, like, I told the same thing to my other daughter, who is crying more. It's like, because you came to the point where your spirit and your body is telling you, you gotta let this out. And it's good to listen to your body and your spirit and let it out. So it's healthy. And it's important to do this when you feel it's time to do this. And again, so, like, that's my understanding as an INFJ. For other people, that we're all different, and understanding that we all have our time and place to mourn, but then also the native perspective of making sure that you stick to that time and place and honor the person's life and death and passing, so they may move on and move to the next and live better and continue that learning and that relearning and that, what do you call, how they're supposed to impact in their next life. Yes. So yeah, there's been a lot of death. And yeah, even in my family there's been a few deaths lately. I let out a couple tears because just remembering who the people were. But haven't gone to funerals. Yeah, I think the last funeral I went to was that 2 or 3 years ago for my friend. It's just, and I don't like singing at those either. And probably and the time before that was when I did sing for the second mother of my children, for her dad and her brother, and I cried both times. It was just those relationships that I had with them. Like, one was like a little brother to me, and the other one was not so much a father figure, but he was like, we had a real loving connection, and we supported each other, and we laughed, and we partied together. I protected him when people were trying to fight him, and he even protected me a couple times. But yeah, it was just a love, and I didn't know he was gonna pass. I just went to go see my baby mom, and then she told me where she's at, and I was shocked. So I went to go see him, and I seen him on his deathbed in the hospital, and he was happy to see me. And I just went to him and cried in his arms as he's laying in bed, and he teared up and told each other we loved each other. And it was like a dying thing. He's like, take care of my daughter. And like, I've always tried to, like, even though I'm not in a relationship with her, I try and hold my word, and like, me and her are still good friends. And I've always wanted to, support her emotionally and through the struggles that she did go to after he passed on. Through her sobriety and all of that, and finding wellness, and just we're still. She's like a distant, real good friend of mine, still, and we still, of course, because we got kids together. And she's not a bad mom. I got full custody. It was just the thing that I did with all my kids. I made sure I got full custody of all my kids. I fought crazy for them and did everything necessary to do that, but that's a whole different topic and subject. Okay, so yeah, there's emotional reasons, and I still hold every life and loss dearly in my heart, and especially for the ones that like you open up to emotionally. But yeah, so I hope I gave you some context and some understanding of what and why my INFJ processing, and also the native perspective, how they align for me, and why I see and do what I do when it comes to death. But yeah, I think that's all I want to share for now. If you have any additional questions, feel free to leave a comment and ask questions. Don't forget to like the button if you appreciated what I shared. Yeah, and if you're going through all of this, the person will always be with you. Their spirit will always be with you. That's another belief and understanding that their spirit is always forever aligned and connected with you, because what you guys shared together in this lifetime, you can always talk to them. You can always share how you feel with them, and they'll always hear you, and they'll always respond to you if you allow and focus on it. That's the spiritual aspect of what I believe in. And I know there's a lot more to it, but that's the gist of it. Alright. Appreciate y'all for listening. Live long and prosper. Embrace and love those that you have with you. Have a good day.